As we get closer to the official unveiling, we are seeing even more evidence that the RTX 5080 is going to have a horrible MSRP. We're also seeing some references to DLSS4. We've got a whole bunch of other GPU-related leaks, rumors, and official information to talk about. But at this point, we're mostly in the leak category since we're getting into officially finding out early next week, which means that we're starting to see a lot of information slipping out there. So what is this? We're seeing headlines from a variety of places saying things like the RTX 5080 could be going for as much as 1,700 euros, but also what's with DLSS4? So these types of headlines all seem to be coming from the same place, which is this series of tweets. We have Thomas Goransky tweeting that the RTX 5080 was found listed for 1,699 euros. Now, this is an Asus model in the screenshot, and it also mentions DLSS4. All of these things are pretty interesting. Now, while Thomas Goransky seemed to be focusing in on that 1,699 euro pricing, we also had the reply, wait, DLSS4? Fake. But then Compite7 Kimmy, who if you've followed the GPU leaks and rumor space for a number of years, is one of our most reliable leakers, is saying DLSS4 is true. So, interesting stuff here. So we kind of need to break this down into two categories on how we're interpreting this. There's the DLSS4 category, and then there's this pricing category. Let's start with DLSS4 because this one is going to be the simplest to discuss. Basically, we know absolutely no other details about DLSS4, so anything else we say about it is pure speculation. And do we have any other confirmation besides this screenshot and then Compite7 Kimmy? Not really. The closest thing we have is a while back Inno3D, and I talked about this in a previous video, had listed the upcoming features for their graphics cards, which likely would have been taken from NVIDIA talking points for their CES announcement for the 50 series. And while I focused in on the neural rendering capabilities, it also did mention advanced DLSS technology, which does not specifically say DLSS4. It just says NVIDIA's deep learning supersampling offering even better image quality and higher frame rates. So notice it is saying even better, but even better compared to what, right? Is that just, referencing stuff we already have? Or is this an actual new version of DLSS, aka DLSS4? It seems like if this is referring to DLSS4, describing better image quality and higher frame rates, that it seems more just an extension of the types of DLSS technology we already have, rather than anything like completely totally new, at least based on this quick description. Also, given that we have screenshots of the boxes for 5080 cards already having leaked out, where they show the feature sets on the back as listed, there's no mention on the box of anything like DLSS4. And when you compare it to the 4080 series, it's pretty much showing the same main ultimate platform for gamers and creators feature set that they mention here. It was the same kind of thing when we saw a Gigabyte box leaked ahead of time, where again, there's no specific reference on the 5080 boxes to any kind of new DLSS technology. Now that doesn't mean it's not there, it just means it's not on the box. And again, we do have Compite7 Kimmy, who's, like I said, one of our more trustworthy sources for leaks and rumors on GPUs saying DLSS4 is true. Now, if DLSS4 is true, again, there's that question, what exactly is it? And the biggest question would be, is it exclusive to the 50 series? Because we've had NVIDIA often, but not always, locking new features to a new generation of graphics cards. We had this coming in with the 20 series, where you needed them to get the DLSS and ray tracing support. And then the 30 series didn't have any new exclusive hardware features, but they did offer a dramatic improvement in performance per dollar, although that's you know, that was on MSRP as we ended up getting into the crypto boom and whatnot that kind of destroyed all of that excitement. But anyway, at least on paper, it was more of a value generation than a feature generation with the 30 series. Then we had the 40 series come in with not so exciting pricing, but with the new frame generation feature, which was locked to the 40 series. Although DLSS upscaling did have versions going into 3 and even 3.5 introducing ray reconstruction, which did still run on the 20 series. It was just the frame generation feature that they at least claimed required the newer optical flow accelerators for their implementation. So will DLSS4 be just an upgrade to the upscaling model or the frame generation model that supports cards that already support those features, or is this a new exclusive for the 50 series? One place we could potentially see something like this would be, okay, is there a frame generation model going to, maybe you could introduce more than one frame between frames, or is there frame extrapolation going to be a thing where you try to guess into the future? I mean, there's all sorts of things this could be, but we really don't know anything for certain. So let's maybe end the DLSS4 conversation there, other than I'll ask you in the comment section, if you had to guess at what DLSS4 is, what would you guess that it would be, if it indeed ends up being a thing? Now, the pricing information. Remember I said the 40 series was very lackluster from a price to performance standpoint, where we're getting many more frames per dollar if you discount frame generation frames. The 4080 was really the epitome of the bad pricing generation that we got with the 40 series. We saw the 4080 coming in at $1,200 MSRP, and by all reports, they didn't sell amazingly well at that price point because, well, you got a performance bump compared to the 3080. The MSRP jump there was mind-blowing. We were going from like a $700 3080 to a $1,200 4080, destroying any kind of performance per dollar upgrade when comparing MSRPs. Further evidence that even NVIDIA realized the $1,200 MSRP wasn't great is the fact that the Super series for the 4080 Super was essentially exactly the same graphics card with a $200 price cut. Sure, there was technically a few single-digit percentage improvements to its hardware specs, but like that's the kind of thing that's margin of error in testing, and or like you have a slightly factory overclocked model and it erases any difference. So the 4080 Super seemed to be an admission that $1,200 was too expensive for the 80 class. And yet, we've been seeing a lot of leaked pricing for the 5080, claiming some very large numbers, way beyond anything that we would like to see if NVIDIA had kind of learned their lesson. Now, in my last video talking about what are my thoughts on these leaked 5080 pricings, I put some big caution on reading too much into this, and I do still stand by that, which is the pricing information is going to be the least reliable leaks to go off of. A lot of what you see here could be placeholders because NVIDIA themselves are well known for deciding on the pricing at the very last minute. So we don't know for sure if, pricing listed here is just complete placeholder that will just totally change once we actually get the MSRPs. So in other words, you could still hold out some sort of hope that the 5080 won't be priced ridiculously. However, if you do take this at face value, this is yet another leak indicating that the MSRP Founders Editions could be at least, if not well over, the $1,200 set by the predecessor 4080, which would be extremely disappointing if that's the case, especially considering how cut down the 5080 specs seem to be compared to the 5090. Now, if we follow through this, Thomas Goronsky is basically taking this 1,700 euros to indicate that the US dollar MSRP could be around 1,349. Which again would be significantly more than the already terrible $1,200 MSRP of the 4080. Now, the WCCF Tech article on this topic does a good job of running through how you would get to that number. So basically they're saying that the $1,700 listed includes a 20% VAT, this being a European listing. And it's also an Asus edition, and you would assume that Asus cards generally go for well above the MSRP. So taking those two things into account, what they basically say is, okay, so if you get rid of if you convert to US dollars, it's 1748. And then if you remove the 20% VAT, that comes down to 1456. Now, if we then assume that it's an Asus card, therefore it's 100 to 200 euros more expensive, and subtract 100 euros off of that, that gets you that about 1350 number from the tweet. Now, you know, there's a lot going on there, including the fact that this could have just been a placeholder price. So, oh man, I really do not want to see the 5080 this expensive. That would be absolutely disastrous in my opinion. It would destroy any interest in the product from like a reasonable consumer. I mean, what if the 5080 is like mind-blowingly faster? Well, I mean, at this point, we're confident it's a 16 gigabyte graphics card. So if it's anything like $1,400 for 16 gigabytes, you start to like, first of all, not that 16 gigabytes isn't a lot of VRAM, but like for that price, could you not have, clamshelled it or something and given us double? And if we look at the specs of the card, again, it seems massively cut down compared to the 5090. So if the MSRP for the 5080 ends up being anywhere in that $1,300-ish range, that would indicate that you'd have to expect the 5090 to be at least $2,000, if not more, right? Which looks absolutely awful. Man, this just, and the fact that AMD has admitted that they're probably not competing at the high end of this generation really means that maybe NVIDIA just feels completely safe throwing whatever ridiculous price they want at the high end, because there's absolutely no competition there. And this could be an indication of that is what we're seeing. If it does end up being the case, then all I can hope is that number one, the 50 series is somehow offering some kind of mind-blowing performance upgrade, which specs-wise seems questionable. I mean, you're moving to GDDR7. Maybe that has some massive impact. But other than that, I mean, seems pretty questionable that we'd be getting anything where it makes this kind of pricing feel good. And the other thing we have going with the leaks on these is that the TDP's figures seem to be out now. So initial reports had the 5090 as 600 watts and the 5080 at 400 watts. But those were likely the TGP, whereas we're now seeing TDP numbers of 575 and 360. Now, those are still big numbers. The 4090, I believe, was at 450 watts. So 575 watts, noticeable increase there. And the 5080, I think that was around 300 watts, right? And now we're going up to, for the 4080, and now we're seeing 360 watts. So noticeable power consumption numbers. Now, where are these coming from? Hongxing 2020 is one of, again, the more reliable and prolific Twitter leakers on the GPU specs, and saying that the next gen 90 is at 575 watts, and now we have Compite 7 Kimi jumping in again with saying and, meaning I would take that as confirmation that he's in agreement that the 5090 is 575, and RTX 5080 at 360 watts. So again, this is still leaks and rumors, but this seems consistent with the 600, 400 numbers we were seeing thrown around before, where that's probably what NVIDIA was telling board partners to make sure that their coolers could handle. And then now we're coming in with the more refined final numbers at 575 and 360, which are still quite high, especially that 575 number. I mean, that is absolutely massive. The 5090 sounds like it's just going to be an absolutely ridiculous monster, which could be exciting. But again, what is it going to cost? And what sort of nuclear reactor are we going to be powering it with? Those are the questions. So that brings us to these kind of finalized leaks and rumors. We'll see if we get any last minute leaks before the January 6th, probably official unveiling of all of this. But this is where it puts us right now, where again, the 5080 is massively cut down from the 5090. We're talking about half of the CUDA cores, half of the VRAM, half of the memory bus, slightly faster memory speed, meaning that the memory bandwidth is more than half, but not by a lot. Oh man. So anyway, if you're spending end up actually being in that $1,300-ish MSRP on the 5080. I mean, wow. What is the 5090 going to cost, and how bad of a deal is the 5080, guys? The other thing I'll mention is that there had been some hope of like a 5080 actually coming with 24 gigabytes of VRAM by implementing 3 gigabyte VRAM modules, because the idea is on a 256-bit bus, you're kind of limited if you're using 2 gigabyte modules to how many modules fit in, giving you 16 gigabytes of VRAM. That's where that number comes from, right? But there was some discussion of GDDR7 offering 3 gigabyte modules, which means you could have gone up to 24. Well, all signs point to the 5080 not utilizing those modules because a lot of people are thinking maybe they're not available yet. However, we now have from Golden Pig Upgrade, who again is actually a fairly reliable hardware leaker in more of the Chinese language. So this is translated through my internet browser. So again, excuse any machine translation awkwardness, but saying according to relevant information. So we don't get a lot of info on what that is. A single 3 gigabyte GDDR7 will be used first on the 5090 notebook, which can achieve 24 gigabytes of large video memory to solve the problem that the previous mobile flagship 256-bit width limit was only 16 gigabytes of video memory. So it is looking like, if you believe, this leak, that the 3 gigabyte GDDR7 models might actually be available, but maybe in limited supply, or NVIDIA just didn't want to use them yet on other cards. But if you believe this, that's how they'll achieve a 24 gigabyte 5090 notebook. Also, when asked about when this will release, his response is normal rhythm. CES releases flagships in February, mid-range products at the end of March, then Asus and MSI go on sale first, Lenovo and HP go on sale later, and then he says they're all released. Normally, they're all released together. So, again, we're talking laptops here, but there's some update on at least the latest leaked information from Golden Pig Upgrade Pack on when to expect the laptop models, but also how that 5090 notebook version would get up to 24 gigabyte. And if you're like, wait, 5090 notebook? Remember, laptop GPUs are often not really talking about the same GPU die as their desktop counterparts. It's likely that the 5090 notebook is going to be based on the GB203 that's used in the desktop 5080. So in other words, it's possible that we'll see a GPU that's basically a desktop 5080, but with 24 gigabytes of VRAM on a 256-bit bus using those 3 gigabit GDDR7 models, but that won't be available, at least initially, in a desktop launch. It'll be the laptop 5090. And then that's where there's speculation that the Super series for the 50 series, could come out, a year later with those 3 gigabyte modules, and then maybe you get your 5080 bumped up to 24. You get your 12 gigabyte cards bumped up as well, and then you get your 8 gigabyte cards up to 12. All of that. So anyway, the point is, that maybe the Super series could end up solving the VRAM issues that we kind of see with the rumored launches here for this. Anyway, my last mention on the price and everything is, man, if the 5080 does have a crazy MSRP, then maybe our only hope would be that the 5070 Ti isn't cut down too much according to leaked specs, still not official, compared to the 5080. Still has a 16 gigabytes of VRAM. If this one came in at a reasonable price, then maybe that's where realistic people could actually get some value. But because if you then step down to the 5070, not only are you taking another big cut, but you're also going down to 12 gigabytes, which doesn't feel great if these are very expensive. So anyway, that's where we're at with things. Again, I've mentioned that we've seen some box art. There we go. Leaking for an MSI 5080. We've seen the gigabyte version coming in previously, and the current rumors are that the 5080 is what's going to hit stores first, and then with the 5090 coming in later, and then the 5070 Ti and 5070 coming in after that. And the latest rumor, but again, still leaks rumors, was January 21st for the 5080. Now, speaking of 5080 designs, there's some speculation that this is a look at the Founders Edition version of the 5080. This is coming from a GeForce LAN 50 video, where you do see this PC, and then when it's lit up a bit, you get this image, which kind of zoomed in and upscaled. It gets this image here from videocards.com. Again, if I haven't mentioned it, as usual, all my sources are linked in the video description today. Now, this is like, first of all, it's not a very good resolution image. And it's very possible that a just random GPU render was used in this video as opposed to their actual Founders Edition design. So I'm not gonna read too much into this. I'll just be like, hey, this is making the rounds, there you go. In general, I really have liked NVIDIA's last several generations of Founders Edition design, where they look a lot more sleek and professional rather than kind of, you know, gamery RGB aesthetic. I know some people like the gamery RGB thing. Personally, I like a sleeker design with less, I don't know, goofiness, but that's a personal preference thing. Now, I was looking for any additional information on AMD GPUs, and it looks like the most relevant new information we're getting is from PowerColor. So PowerColor is not specifically calling this a next generation AMD GPU. However, that's obviously what it would be at this point. The PowerColor tweet saying, "Every edge shines like a gem. Every second burns like fire. If power was in your hands, how would you use it?" Anyway, PowerColor has some pretty dramatic branding. You know, they have this is likely their Red Devil, if you look at the logo and whatnot, for their, what we would guess would be the 9070 XT. We get a few more images that they've shared as well. Again, seeing the Devil branding. So again, this is likely the next generation Red Devil for the 9070 XT. Speaking of, you know, GPU designs and whatnot, well, like I said, I like kind of the understated look of the Founders Edition NVIDIA cards. If you do want kind of a flashy build, especially with red, I have always liked the PowerColor designs as well. And in the past, I've liked that they've offered some of the swappable backplates and things like that. So anyway, there's that. All right, that's the latest GPU leaks, rumors, information we have for you today. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it in the comment section. And again, we're so close, guys. January 6th, we should hopefully find out a lot more of this official information. Stay tuned for all of that, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.